The atmosphere has started to warm in the stratosphere around the North Pole. It's going to continue to do so, disrupting the flow, and that means some cold air moving south as we head into the end of the month, also into December. Right now, cold shot moving in, it looks like, as we end the month around Thanksgiving and the weeks beyond that, maybe some lake effect snow. And I do think you start to get warm around the first of the month across the center of the country, but some really cold air lurking back to the north and west. We start to see the polar vortex start to get split up here across the Arctic. A deep trough digging into the east as we head towards the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th. This is the this is the GFS extended weeklies taking you out pretty far. It's pretty chilly looking across the eastern United States with your trough back to the northwest of Hawaii, ridge across Alaska. This looks cold for the east, and this starts to reverse some on the European weeklies, pushing that back into the west as we head into January, which I do think is going to happen. This is the European weeklies, cold across the west. That starts to work east as we head through the middle of the month, and then around Christmas, it looks to me cold here in the northeast, maybe a little bit warmer across the west. Just because this is showing up, a little bit of blocking across Greenland, I think it's still in a cold pattern across the east as we head toward the end of December. A long way to go before we get here, but notice how this trough starting to retrograde back into the west as we head into January. That could mean a big January thaw for the east. We're so far from that. Let's talk about the next couple of weeks. Right now, warm, above average as we head into the upcoming week. Maybe a shot of cool air for some areas of the northeast, but overall, above average. Here comes the cold. You'll start to feel it across western Canada. This is going to bring some snow east, also down into the mountains as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday, and maybe a little bit of snow trying to catch the moisture as it exits the east coast. At this point, I still think the GFS is overdoing the snow. More to come on that, but one decent cold shot of air, the European, this is the AI, has been the most aggressive with some bone-chilling cold. Moving down the east face of the Rockies. This makes sense because if you get this cold moving south, you're going to get an extreme warm up on the front side of wherever this system or trough digs in, and at least some sort of low pressure wanting to develop along this boundary. More to go, and this would mean extreme warmth further to the east with this type of setup, and eventually this does start to shift further to the east. Even in the weeklies, it's starting to show up. Snow long range all the way through the month of December. I mean, if you take all the members and look at it, there's a lot of chances for snow still on the table, even though one or two members may not be showing it at this time. We're looking at the operational GFS to start us off. As we work through the rest of the week, we've got rain moving into the Ohio Valley. Cold air still way up across Alaska, although it is getting colder here. Temperatures dropping. We've got some snow around too. Low pressure just off the east coast. Behind this, we'll see some cooler temperatures moving into the northeast with another decent shot of cold air here. Warm still across the southern plains, down into Texas. An upper low spinning through the southwest. That's going to bring some precipitation here. Some rain and snow possible, especially into the highest elevations. And it may put some moisture here into southern Colorado. Now we're getting into Sunday. Some heavier snow possible across parts of British Columbia, the Canadian Rockies. As this cold air starts to dive south, some of the snow is going to try to extend a little bit east of the mountains. So Edmonton, down to Calgary, down here into eastern Montana, we could maybe see a little bit of snow, although I think the heaviest snow with this type of system is going to be further to the north into Canada on the backside of this. Quite a bit of wind and snow now moving through Saskatchewan and eventually Manitoba. Behind this, some colder air pulling south too. This is looking pretty good to me. This would be Tuesday of next week with rain slugging back north and east into the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes, eventually into the northeast. We'll have to watch the northern side of this. We could see some mixed precipitation. And then once this low starts to wrap up, as it closes in on the Hudson Bay, some wind and some snow back here into North Dakota, Manitoba. And then on the southern side of this, the GFS does this all the time, guys. You know, when I was forecasting every day, I would look at the GFS during this time period and go, yeah, we're probably not going to see much snow on the back end of this, although yesterday it was trying to really show something going. Today, it's really back down. Classic GFS move here, in my opinion. But I do think we turn cold behind this once we move into Friday. Black Friday, it's cold around the Great Lakes. I think we've got the lake effect snow machine going full force, and then another system plowing into the west. This could bring more wind, rain, and snow, and this would be associated with the true Arctic air that starts to show up on the European AI. This is the GFS. It looks a little bit different. I would argue it's probably not the best model to look at this out this far in time at, but you can clearly see that Arctic air moving south, colliding with a big surge north of moisture, and wherever that collides, we could see some interesting weather, I think, heading into the first week of December. Let's see how all this shakes out. And then a cold pattern, at least for the northern U.S., while the southern states, I think you stay relatively warm. Now, we may get a shot of cold into Texas, but the southeast overall escaping any massive shots of cold air, I think, in this time frame. A closer look, we'll take you through the next couple of days. We'll dive in here into the west first, and we'll work our way east. There's that upper low swinging through the southwest, putting some snow into Arizona, into Colorado. Some of that's been showing up a little heavier here, too, into parts of western Colorado. Not a lot of snow's falling here this year, so we may get some. Here comes the next system into the northwest. This is the one that's going to move east of the mountains, putting some snow towards Edmonton, towards Calgary. Again, this slides east, so a couple of inches out of this, and then here comes the cold with snow showers into the mountains of Wyoming, into parts of Idaho, Montana, a little bit of snow here. This is not a huge snow event for you guys, but it's going to definitely turn colder. And snow levels are getting pretty low here in the Pacific Northwest as we head into Wednesday the 26th. I don't know that we get Thanksgiving snow all the way down to sea level, but boy, that's pretty cold. And then it actually starts to warm up a little bit ahead of the next system. We flip back over to rain, and then look, more snow across the west with a really active pattern setting up. Here's a look at your temperatures on Thursday across the west. Let's continue to move across the country. We'll head east now. We've got our system that's been sliding across the south. It will continue to push into the mid-south, eventually the mid-Atlantic, drying things out across Texas. Relatively quiet heading through the weekend. We've got that upper low. That's going to bring the snow we've talked about to Colorado. It's also going to bring the rain back into Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, north into Nebraska, and then eventually east into Missouri, heading into Monday morning and also into Arkansas. And there could be some thunderstorms on the southern side of this. Here comes the real cold air, though, behind it, rushing in. Again, the GFS has been trying to connect some snow here on the backside of this. This looks too cold, too weird to me at this point. More to come, but I do think there is another shot of cold air behind this. Here's a look at your temperatures heading into the weekend. Warmer temperatures moving into the Great Lakes. Will still be relatively cold, though, especially to the UP of Michigan. Another warm weekend across the south. Temperatures in the 70s, even some 80s showing up once you get way down into South Texas, and 50s as far north as Montana. This is not going to last, though. Eventually, we'll see that cold air blast in. These are your highs by Tuesday, back below freezing. By Wednesday, we've got the 40s back into Texas, and you can see how that cold pushes all the way to the south. Overnight lows dropping into the 30s, but we modify pretty quickly heading into Thanksgiving. That cold air, though, is lurking off to the north and west. You can see the single digits and teens not far away. All it's going to take is a tap into this, and again, the European AI is really trying to bring that cold air south. More to come. Rain moving north and east as we head through the weekend. A little bit of snow here into northern parts of New England. Otherwise, we dry out. Another light chance of snow moving through parts of southern Ontario into Quebec. This could bring a little bit of heavier snow into the mountains here of the northeast, otherwise dry across the mid-Atlantic into the south. The next real shot of rain starts to increase as we approach the Thanksgiving travel season, Tuesday into Wednesday. Rain picking up from Michigan down into Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee. Here you go into Tuesday afternoon, into Tuesday evening. Some cold air will be stuck into the northeast, so there could be a little bit of wintry mix heading into early Wednesday morning here before that gets scoured out, and then more rain here into the mid-Atlantic. Some of that could be pretty heavy as we head into Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday evening. The cold dropping in behind this. Again, the GFS is a little bit aggressive with the flip to snow early Thanksgiving Day. This would be early morning Thursday next week. It's got snow in Erie, Columbus, maybe even Cincinnati. I just don't know. To me, this looks a little weird, very GFS-like, but behind it, look at the lake effect going off of Erie, Ontario, even off of Lake Huron. Really all of them except Michigan. Just the fetch isn't great here. And that continues with this cold cyclonic flow into the northeast. And then, where do we go from here? A lot of questions, but it looks pretty stormy heading into December. Here's a look at your temperatures. A big dividing line on Friday again, 40s and 50s, even some 30s to the north of this line. Below it, 60s, 70s, even 80s across Florida. Temperatures on the way down into the northeast will be cooling off a little bit. And here's your temperatures heading into Sunday. Not too bad. We warm up actually across parts of the Midwest back into the 50s and 60s. The cold will eventually come. And I think even if we don't see the snow, this is going to be a significant front that does push east through the holidays. And then once we get toward Friday and Saturday, it is going to push to the Gulf Coast. It'll take away the 80s and 70s and knock you back into the 40s and 50s for highs. Florida, though, still holding on to the 70s. Nice here, but a cool shot is on the way. And the cold is lurking the further north you go. There's the warm surge ahead of that next system, and you can kind of see how the GFS is sort of all over the place with your temperatures. A really tricky forecast. I'll be on it. See you next time.